have a different, there are different stages in development. They have different scopes. One of them affects just the police department, one affects the city, and the third is they have different implementation schedules. And so they should be treated separately, but it's up to the board's discretion whether to vote on one, both, or neither, and in what order to vote on them.
Yep, sounds good.
All right, I'm gonna let everybody in. All right, good evening, everybody. It is 5 p.m., so we're gonna go ahead and get started. The recording is in progress. This is also being live streamed on YouTube, and please use the raise hand feature to eliminate crosstalk. And with that, Sean, take us away.
Thank you, Kim. I would like to call this meeting to order. It is 5 p.m. on February 28th. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. We appreciate everyone being here and continuing participation in these meetings, and also for any community members who may be tuning in. First, I'd like to start with our centering exercise. I will read a statement. Excuse me. So our center exercise, today we convene to listen and learn from each other through reflection and discussion. As we reevaluate and improve our public safety practices, we elevate the voices and experiences of the communities who have been and continue to be disproportionately impacted by equitable systems. We thank all those who have advocated and worked on dismantling injustice in Tigard and our broader community. We build off of their efforts to create more equitable and just outcomes for peace for people of all backgrounds and abilities. The purpose of our meeting tonight is to develop and understand an understanding of current public safety structure, practices, and procedures, identify and eliminate institutional racism within Tigard's public institutions by centering equity and racial justice, bring forward the concerns and experiences of ourselves and our community, and bring recommendations to city leadership to improve the lived experiences of all people in Tigard. Now, we'll do a breathing exercise together. You may turn off your monitor for this portion. Close your eyes and gaze softly downward. Feel the chair on your legs. Breathe in deeply through your nose and out your mouth. Feel your hands in your lap. Breathe in deeply through your nose and out your mouth. Feel your feet on the ground. Breathe in deeply through your nose and out your mouth. Slowly open your eyes and begin to breathe normally. Thank you all for participating and creating space with me. And now, Kim, would you begin roll call?
Yes, Sean. Commander McDonald.
Here.
Officer Nunn.
Here.
Shelby Rahala.
Here.
Michael O'Brien.
Here.
Elise Butera. No. Emilio Calderon, let me know he's going to be a few minutes late, but we are still expecting him tonight. Liz Newton.
Here.
John Trin.
Present.
Jimmy Brown.
Here.
Lee Landers. Patty Lofgren.
Here.
Justin Lowe.
Here.
Danny Rauda. Valerie Sasaki.
Here.
Sean Stoldryer,
Here.
Nick Darmer also said he's going to be a little late, but he will be joining us, and Jeff Mott.
Here.
Sean, that is roll.
Thank you, Kim. Now I'd like to open our meeting for public comment. Has anyone? I didn't see anything, but I thought I would ask.
Nope, there was no public comment this week.
Okay, perfect. Tonight, no community members have joined us to speak. Public comments are vital to the board's mission, and we welcome community feedback on our work. If you have comments for the board, written testimony must be submitted by 4:30 p.m. the day of the scheduled meeting. If you'd like to speak at our meeting, please email our staff at the email address presented on the screen. Okay. Next, our first update. I would like to welcome Commander McDonald to give an update to the board, along with Jimmy Brown and Patty Lofgren about the chat with the chief event that occurred last week.
Thank you, Sean. Yeah, I'd like to just start with inviting Patty or Jimmy, if you'd like to share your observations for your experience when you joined the chief last week for Chat with the Chief. If you'd like to talk about that at all.
Oh, I'd be happy to start. It was a very rewarding experience. We arrived about 20 minutes early and sat with the chief, and she talked a little bit about the format of the evening, and her public Kelsey had sent us some questions to think about beforehand, which was nice in that it allowed us to sort of think about things that we might want to focus on. And then the chief posed, once we got started, she started off the meeting on her own, and then she invited us to join her at the table. And she asked questions and then let each one of us respond. And these were the questions that Kelsey had sent out. So I think Jimmy and I were pretty well prepared. And then she opened it up to other questions or thoughts or comments that we had. And I thought it went really well. And then after we were done, she let us move, and we could either have left or stay. And of course, we both stayed. And at the end, she invited us back to the table, and we continued our conversation. So it was a really nice hour. I think we got some good information about the PSAB out to the community. We definitely encourage people to view or attend or make comments at our meetings. I'm kind of sorry someone hadn't jumped on that yet, but I'll turn it over to Jimmy.
I echo all of Patty's statements. I thought it was a good time well spent, as they would say. It was actually good to be in a room face to face with people, because that's been such a long time. There were several questions that were asked by folks who were observing the session. So it was interesting to listen to the chief discuss those. There were some discussions about different types of police calls. I think that the opportunity to really talk to folks out there about PSAP was well worth the time for Patty and I to both spend with the chief. We were able to talk about some areas that we felt really good about in terms of having been with PSAP since its beginning. I think we finished it off with some pretty good comments around the position that is not yet named. I think that was a good ending place for us in terms of the discussions, both about the police standards sergeant, as well as the position that we shall gently call ombudsperson. So I was impressed, and I did have some friends of mine that were watching the show, and they thought it went very well.
Just a couple of things. One of the things I asked the chief if I could ask her before we even started was if I could ask her to elaborate on, I don't know if you remember when she was at that conference on the East Coast last year, and she missed our meeting. And I think Commander McDonald mentioned that Tigard had gotten quite a good score. This was an FBI-sponsored conference, and I asked her if she could elaborate on what the rubric was that we were scored upon, and if she could talk to the public about that. And then she talked about the fact that we were the only police department in the country that got 20 points out of 20 points. And that was on our standards. And so I thought that was pretty cool that, the community got to hear that. And then the other thing I commented on that I think, goes to all of the folks that have attended these meetings was on the level of detail each of the presenters brings with their slideshow and the information they share with us each week about whatever topic they're there to speak about. I just have felt that there's been a great level of expertise, very well prepared, very informative, and I've just learned so much. So I wanted to point that out to members of the community as well.
Well, thank you both so much. On behalf of the chief, I appreciate very much you taking your valuable time to join her and talk to the community, because it is important to sit down and hear from community members the perspectives that you bring, and the unique thoughts that you have when asked those questions by other members of the community, and being able to hear the questions that we often get asked by different members of the community. And the only other thing, Sean, that I wanted to hit really quickly is I asked Kim, I think Kim or Tammy will send out after the meeting a flyer for our community academy. We're going to do a community academy again. It looks like it's going to actually be able to go, because it's one of those things you really have to be able to do in person, because there's some hands-on things that we do. If some of you have been to it used to be called Citizens Academy, which is being rebranded Community Academy, it's going to look quite different with a bunch of different content. It might be a little, you all have been way more informed through this process. So it may not necessarily be something that you can certainly come if you want and sign up for it, but it might be better for you to spread out to your networks that you've worked with and to some folks that you think would benefit from learning more about the Tigard Police Department. It'll be a much more surface level rather than diving in depth, like the in-depth stuff that we've done with the PSAB, but cover a variety of similar and some of the same topics. So Kim or Tammy will send out a flyer that you can forward on to your networks, maybe later tonight or tomorrow. And then if you have any questions, please reach out to me or to Kelsey Anderson. She's our PIO, and it's the two of us that are working on organizing this. And you're going to hear from a lot of the same subject matter experts, the sergeants and some of the officers that specialize in those certain areas when people go through that. So if you have questions, reach out, or you all are kind of subject matter experts already, so you can probably answer most of the questions that people would ask. Councilor Newton.
Yeah, I just wanted to put my plug in. I was in the first academy, and I wasn't sure how much I would learn, but because I work there, but it was amazing how much I learned from participating. And it was also great to be participating with a group of other folks, because their questions were insightful. And, you could really learn when you were spending time with people what they were concerned about, and, what things they really felt good about with regard to public safety. So even though I'd been working for the city for, quite a while, I learned quite a bit. And so I encourage any of you that can spare the time or know somebody that would find this interesting. We even had a couple of young folks that were considering police as a career sign up. So anyway, encourage you all to pass that on. It's time well spent. Thank you.
Senator
thank you.
McDonald.
That's it.
McDonald, does that include a ride along?
Generally, yes, that we would accommodate that, at the end of usually we do it towards the end or after it's done, and we try to accommodate everybody that's interested in doing that. So yeah, generally it would include at least an opportunity if someone chooses to do one. Yes. Okay.
Very exciting. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you.
Commander McDonald, Jimmy, Patty, thank you for your update on the Chat with the Chief. Sounds like a very worthwhile session, and I'm glad to hear it went well. With that, Kim, let's turn it over to you now to go over the proposed recommendations for the Professional Standards Sergeant and the Ombudsman recommendation discussion.
Absolutely. So we've spent the last several meetings talking about these two recommendations. I am going to direct that even though they kind of genesis out of the same idea, for several reasons they should be voted on separately. One of them being that they are at very different levels of conceptual development. Two being they have different scope. One is a police department position, one is a citywide position, and the third being they're on different implementation schedules. But it is completely up to your discretion whether to vote on one, both, or neither, as well as what to vote on them in. So with that, here are the recommendations as they currently stand in draft form. We have the Professional Standards Sergeant, which is creation of the position, and then the budget and how it will be funded through the City General Fund at $174,000. Any questions, comments, revisions on this recommendation? Again, not calling for the vote, just okay. I think we spent some time here previously. And then moving on to, this is the married, I guess, version of this community center citywide role from the two breakout rooms that we had last time. And has been rewritten to evaluate creating a position, reallocating existing city resources, or empowering a volunteer board to utilize a community-centered lens to assist community members in navigating the government systems of Tigard and fostering trust through meaningful conversation. By meeting people where they are, this role would be a connection point between community members and the city. This role would help ensure that communities of color are afforded equity, justice, transparency, and accountability. So opening up the floor for questions, comments, amendments to this recommendation. Liz, please.
I was going to see if somebody else wanted to go first. But I will say that I'm not sure it's necessary that we say anything about reallocating city resources. As a city councilor and budget committee member, I don't know that that's necessary. I think it's important to make the recommendation about the position, but that funding and how that works, you know, we can leave that up to the budget committee and then ultimately the council. The other thing I'm wondering, and I'm wondering about getting feedback from folks on this, is we can create a position, which, you know, I support, but I wonder if it's confusing to include the volunteered board in the same recommendation. Just listening to the comments, I get the feeling folks are interested in this position, with the volunteer board also, you know, something that, you know, we might look at, but I'm wondering if it would be better to keep them separate. And I'm interested in people's thoughts on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. And Valerie, please.
Oh, Valerie.
So thank you so much, Liz. I think those are really great comments. And I agree that separating the funding from the recommendation is probably a great idea. So I would second or move that we strike the language with respect to reallocating existing city resources, since this is a conceptual discussion at this point about where we're going with this. You know, I'm agnostic as to the empowering a volunteer board language, because I think that's the mechanism. And what I think our discussion, at least in the breakout room that I was in, focused on was the importance of meeting people where they are and providing a way for people to help navigate the systems. You know, so this sprung out of the discussions that we had been having about an ombudsman position, which I think is why the language reflects the creation of a position here. But I think that is something that I think would be better left to city council to determine the most effective way to effectuate that goal. So I'm agnostic about whether we keep the volunteer board position language in there. But from my perspective, the important part of this recommendation is the objective, not the mechanism.
Thank you, Valerie. Does everybody agree on eliminating the reallocating existing resources language? All right, I see a lot of nods, thumbs up, so we'll remove that. Any other thoughts on the empowering a volunteer board mechanism? Oh, Jimmy, yes? I think looks like you're stopping.
I think that the concept of a volunteer community board is one that really warrants standing alone. I think that just adds another layer to the city structure that would be valuable to the community at large. I think the position is rather specific, that it is a go-to place for an individual or groups to connect with the city around concerns that they have relating to not only public safety issues, but really issues across the city. And I think that keeps in spirit with the language that was introduced back in, I believe it was September, when City Council was saying that, really this is part of a process to ensure that the city overall is dealing with issues of institutional racism, equity, and social justice. So I am in support of the position idea, the concept of empowering a volunteer board. Again, I think that's a great idea, but I think that's further down the pathway in the process that we're talking about at this point.
Okay, thank you, Jimmy. And Nicole from the city manager's office, please.
Oh, I think John was first. So if John, do you want to go before me?
It's just really quick. I mean, I
go
hear
for
what Jimmy is saying, and I support that. I mean, I'm just looking at this in terms of evaluate creating position. I like to see in terms of just maybe in terms of create a position, right? For the community center citywide road, and also regarding towards empowering a volunteer board. I think that's an important mechanism that Valerie mentioned. So for me, it would be in terms of creating a position and empowering a volunteer board to utilize community center lens to assist in community members in navigating government systems and so forth. So it's my 2 cents.
John, just to make sure, you're advocating for removing evaluate and changing this or to an and?
Yeah. Not sure what the rest of the members have to say about that.
Thank you. And Nicole, please.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Nicole Hendricks. I'm a senior management analyst in the city manager's office here at Tigard. And the reason I joined today, I was super curious about this discussion because I follow Kim's emails and I saw this description. And when I read it about empowering a volunteer board specifically, it immediately reminded me of the efforts that we have a city board called the Committee for Community Engagement. And this board, when full, we're 15 members. We just went through interviews, so I'm hopeful that will be soon. Our goal is very similar to this effort, and the committee has even talked about kind of being more focused on equity efforts specifically. So I'd be very curious, and I know the chief is scheduled to come talk in a couple of weeks about an engagement survey, or maybe someone from police department at the Committee for Community Engagement meeting, but maybe this is a conversation that we continue with that group as well, because I do see a role here for them. And in terms of just being where people are, we go to the farmers markets, we're at volunteer events, and more events hopefully with COVID. So I think that is the goal. And we also kind of are set up so that we represent different neighborhoods in Tigard so that there's diverse representation. And so I just wanted to add that in case you didn't know that our goals are very similar in this way. And I do want to kind of connect these two, but I'm curious to see where this conversation leads. So more of just a FYI. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. And Valerie, please.
Thank you so much for coming, Nicole. It's nice to see you again, and I appreciate your participating with us today. Just a couple of points. I would hate to see efforts in this area be subsumed within larger community involvement efforts, which I think could happen if we're not careful about the focus of this. And from a drafting perspective, the word "or" is inclusive of "and." So I think what John had asked would be that we strike "or" and the / and substitute "and" instead, which I think is useful.
Yeah, I was just leaving the "or" and in as a note to me that we need to come back and discuss that.
Okay, yeah. So my recommendation would be to follow what John is recommending and strike "or" from that first sentence, because I think that both concepts provide really valuable mechanisms for people to approach, the challenges that we may be facing with diversity down the road in Tigard. So that would be my thought on that.
And Valerie, before you sign off, did you have any comment or thought on that first word, evaluate?
I think we are making a recommendation with respect to, again, the goal here, right? And so there's going to necessarily be an evaluation of what the mechanism looks like. So I also agree with John that I don't think we necessarily need to have the word evaluate in our recommendation, since we're recommending that the city council consider this. But the "or" and thing is a personal nit that kind of like fingernails on a chalkboard for me from a drafting perspective. So I felt compelled to say something.
Fair enough. So folks, we've got the "or" and, so how are we feeling about creating that as an "and"? I see a lot of thumbs up and no thumbs down. So we'll move that.
Kim?
Yes, Liz, please.
Sorry, I had my hand up. I just wanted to follow up on what Nicole said. I'm actually the city council liaison to the Committee for Community Engagement. And we did interviews last week, and I am so thrilled to tell you about the diversity of our applicants. It was just so heartwarming to me to see the diversity that we got. And we're going to be appointing 8 new members, and I'm excited about that. But I agree with Valerie that and I think it's possible we could take that group in a direction. So I think if we're going to combine these 2 recommendations, the word empowering is key, because again, it could be that particular group takes on some new roles or shifts. But right now, that really isn't their role. And so I'm agreeing with what Valerie's saying. It's not that it isn't possible, but that isn't what they're really set up for right now. And so the other thing too is, I think we're a little farther, and I don't think we need evaluate. I mean, it's a recommendation, so I don't know that we need that. It's gonna get evaluated anyway. We have to figure out how to pay for it and all that. The other thing is, I still am and I guess if it's evaluating and we're further along on the position than we are on the board, that's the way it plays out. So I think in terms of how it plays out, but I feel a little bit like the position is a lot farther along than the board. So that would be my thought. And that's just what I'm thinking about.
Thank you, Liz. So following up on that, how do folks feel about eliminating this word evaluate? Okay, all thumbs up. So now we are at create a position and empower a volunteer board, and the rest of the language has stayed the same. So invite questions, comments, and or a, sorry, not and or, sorry, Valerie, a motion to call one of either of the recommendations to a vote. Oh, Shelby, please.
So as written, I'll vote no on this. I don't think that a position is required. We had a lengthy conversation in my breakout room last meeting 2 weeks ago, and I think additional staff can do this, or current staff can do this. I think that it's the job of all departments right now to fit this into their current work plan. I think that this is part of what the city needs to do, every staff person. So I don't think this is specific to just one person. I would really like to see the city take on a more concerted effort to accomplish all the goals, which I totally agree with, but to accomplish the goals with existing staff resources. And I think it needs to be part of everybody's job, not just one. So I don't support a position.
Thank you, Shelby. And Valerie, please. Oh, you're muted.
Do that once every meeting. So I have nothing further to add on this recommendation. On the prior recommendation with respect to the professional standards sergeant, you know, the only thing I would say is that the statement of what that salary, benefits and such should be is not really the purview of this group. So, you know, I would say, yeah, I would strike that language.
Thank you, Valerie. And Justin, please.
Yes, going to the second recommendation, no problems with the language moving forward as is. I just wanted to express my actual support for it, mainly because with the concept of having a department-wide focus on equity and inclusion work and tasking folks to be responsible for things such as assisting community members navigating government systems, fostering trust, like all of that. Yes, that is great to instill department-wide and across the entire city government. However, the addition of creating a position that specifically prioritizes this prevents issues that could occur, such as a diffusion of responsibility and a diffusion of taking proactive steps and action in general. And so I think that there is a benefit in both having a position and then empowering a volunteer board. I know in our breakout discussion, we talked about the utility of a volunteer board, whether it's a CCE or another entity that feels accessible to the community, is reflective of the community, and also in some form and fashion can also act independent in its nature, to where it can create that level of transparency and trust and accountability to folks who live within the city of Tigard.
Thank you, Justin. I know it feels a little bit like we're going back and forth, but that's only because we are. So going back to the professional standards sergeant recommendation, how do folks feel about removing the specific salary? Okay, I see a lot of thumbs up, so we'll go ahead and take that out. All right, so now we are back at questions, comments, additional edits, or a call for a vote on one or both, either one of the standing recommendations. Valerie, please.
So I think we can bring them to a vote if people don't have other, we discussed these an awful lot. So I would be okay with that. And we can have a separate vote on them if you like. But yeah, other people are okay with that too.
So we have a couple hands, and then so Jimmy.
My apologies. I kept hitting the clap button when I was trying to do the raise hands.
Sorry.
and it kept disappearing. I was like, wait a minute, I wanted to say something. Yeah, I am in support of removing the dollar figures. I do think that's certainly an internal mechanism piece that the budget office and management analysts can and HR can take a look at. So that certainly makes sense. As well, I think there would be some value in having both recommendations voted on separately, because I do think they are two distinct pieces. And then thirdly, in just a general response to Shelby's piece relative to the second recommendation, I agree that the work of diversion, inclusion, and equity is a general responsibility of the city and its departments. And I applaud the city for looking at itself internally and saying all of these departments should fashion their work around diversity, inclusion, and equity. That being said, I'm also a realist, and I recognize that there have been many cities, municipalities that have spoke this particular language. But when it comes down to not only talking the talk, but walking the talk, it becomes very, very important that we move beyond just saying, yes, of course, our departments should be doing this. Yes, our departments will be doing this. And to put our money where our mouth is, so to speak, and bring in a specific position that is here to ensure that not only that the community has an individual to connect with, but then ensures that the city is indeed walking the walk and or talking the talk and walking the walk. So I do want to put my support behind the group approving the recommendation for the community-centered citywide role. I think a volunteer board, again, is as well something that the board, or excuse me, that city council needs to look at for the entire city, different from other actions that the city is using to engage the populace. So.
Thank you. And Commander, please.
So as I look at this for a position, my biggest concern is what the scope of work that we would be asking this person to do. When going back to what Shelby said about it being the role of all of us as servants to the community, it's our responsibility to do all of these things in here. And as a leader in this organization, I look at it as my responsibility in the police department to hold, at very least, people in the police department accountable. I know the chief feels that that's one of her primary roles, is to make sure that we're doing everything that is said in here. So my concern about a position is the scope of work that we would be asking a person to do. And maybe I'm overthinking this, but this seems like this is a huge task that we're going to be expecting a single person to do. That, is it the accountability part for the other employees in the city as to whether or not they're actually doing the work that is expected? Based on how this is written, I look at this as being something that is within the scope of my work every day, and to continue getting better at doing it, right? So I guess that's a question I pose back, is, are we creating something that is that's too big for one person? And then looking at it from the standpoint of feeling, and I said this in my breakout group 2 weeks ago, I look at it as my role, and I think every employee in this city should look at it as their role to be doing these things. So I guess that's a question that I pose more than an observation. I just want to make sure that I want to be able to get behind something that I know we can be successful at, or that a person can be successful at, in making sure that we're accountable to the community. And I don't want to set a person up for missed expectations by creating a position or doing something like that that should already be done by everybody that works in the city. Anyway, I'll stop for now.
Thank you, Commander. And Sean, please.
I'm in favor of moving forward with the vote on the professional standards position. I think that's a well thought out plan. The position is well thought out. I think that will be a great value add to our community because it will help instill the values of our community in the training programs and implement the police reform bills that came out last summer and that will undoubtedly come out this summer. So I'm ready to vote on that. I'm not in favor of the community-centered citywide role. I think to do this right and fairly, it would require a department. It would be expensive. And when I talk to folks in the community, I talk to parents, people that work here, people that live here, people that walk to downtown. And this just is not their priority for funding right now. There's other things I won't get into. And I think the city Tigard staff have the tools, the resources, and the great people. I mean, some really great people to accomplish these goals. And I'd love to see the conversation about that continue. I keep learning about new great things that City of Tigard does. Because I'm busy being a dad and working and keeping my household running. So tonight I learned about the community engagement team. I think that's very cool. I do recall little snippets in the news about it. I think there's a great opportunity for that to connect with the diversity inclusion position, to consider some of these goals, to hear these ideas and include those things. So those are my thoughts. Thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you, Sean. And Jeff, please.
Hey, thank you. I don't get to vote, but I'd like to speak. So thank you. I just wanted to address Commander McDonald's talking points about the position and maybe too much work. I don't think it's fair to take a hypothetical position with a hypothetical person and just disqualify it automatically because we think it might be too much work. It could be the other way around where this person is either a volunteer or gets paid and is completely gung-ho for the idea of this. So I don't think it's fair to just disqualify it. Second of all, like Jimmy said, I'll put it in just a couple words. Creating this position is just a good faith gesture to do what we've been tasked to do in this PSAB about equity, justice, transparency, most importantly, and accountability. The department can very much do the job, but having a person shows that they're willing to share the information with a person of the community. And I'm just like struggling right now because we talked about in a couple meetings ago about outside looks into misconduct or use of force. That was fairly shot down by the department. And we're talking about a second time having an outside look into the department, and that's already getting shot down again. So I'm struggling right now with this discussion.
Thank you, Jeff. And Liz, please.
Yeah, I guess I would like to say that a couple of things. First of all, we're going to be considering, or we've already considered a position internally on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we have great team members, and I know they focus on this, but for the most part, that isn't their primary focus. They're a planner, they're a police officer, they're an engineer, and they do well at that. And they want to try to treat people as fairly as they can. But when I was in the city manager's office, I used to get a lot of calls from people saying, I don't even know what to ask. I'm in this situation and I don't even know. And I could have a lot of calls with people. I would go to the departments and talk to them, try to explain to the caller what the process was. So I don't think this is beyond the ability of one person. now. I mean, we do have to take a look at the position and look at how it would be written. But I think if we're going to make a commitment internally, I think this is taking our, not just responding to the community when we get a request or providing information, but really navigating, being a community navigator to help folks when something comes up that either it's a concern or a confusion, they feel like they've been treated very unfairly, they just don't understand. And I think somebody, hopefully in the city manager's office, whose primary job is to be a community navigator, has that hat on and can work with our very talented, well-meaning, hardworking team to make sure that, you know, they understand, okay, well, this is where the rub is. This is where the confusion is. This is what this person doesn't understand. And I think if we're going to make the commitment internally to DEI position, I think it's important to make the same commitment to the community. So they know they have I'm going to call it a navigator rather than ombudsperson or a advocate, because it's somebody that they can work with to navigate systems. And maybe the volunteer, maybe the committee then becomes a group that can help recommend policy changes or whatever needs to happen. But I just see this as somebody that can work with our team members and our community in making some, you know, best outcomes for things. So I'm rambling a little, but I do feel pretty strongly that it's an important position, because it would be somebody whose primary role is to be a community, I'm going to call it navigator. So I'll let somebody else talk.
Thank you, Liz. And just to summarize, I guess what I think I'm hearing is that from the breakout rooms and then even in the discussion this evening, it is very clear that a gap has been identified by this group, that having some sort of navigator, having some advocacy, having a person who looks out into the community, or having some role of what looks out into the community and brings things back to the city and serves as a community advocate is very important and currently doesn't exist, at least not in the way that this group would like it to. What I'm hearing from other folks is that the solution that is proposed, the specific solution of creating a position and empowering a board, is creating some anxiety. So I see agreement on the problem and disagreement on that solution. And I'm wondering if there is a way to bridge that gap tonight. And with that, Commander, please.
So two things. I'll start with first, Jeff. I don't want my question to be taken out of context with relation to looking inside the department. I would hope that this group would feel comfortable and confident enough to come to the chief or I, or any of the other folks that from the police department that have presented, and ask us those difficult questions and expect that we're going to be transparent and honest with our answers. And so I don't want you to think that my question and my confidence in city staff to be able to answer the questions that we're talking about for this position to be resistant to looking inside the department, or any of the departments in the city for that matter. That is not what I meant. I mean, I'm happy to open the door and let people come in at any time, and we can talk about those difficult questions whenever anybody wants, especially this group. And you've asked some good questions. You've asked some tough questions in the time that we've been together. And I would hope that would continue, and that please don't look at my questions as resistance to that, to this position. Now, to follow that up by saying, Liz, I appreciate your context of a community navigator. By explaining that and that type of position, it's something more that I feel like I can wrap my arms around, because I was having a hard time understanding the scope of this position. And if you start talking about it from the navigator, I did a bunch of research on ombudsmans and things like that, trying to understand what those roles were. And for a city of our size, I couldn't, my brain wouldn't make that fit, because the scope was just so much bigger, right? We're talking about much larger cities than Tigard. Talking about a community navigator, I start giving that more thought and some more understanding in something that I could see as being a scope that would work for this city, for the city government and for the community that could help with that. Now, granted, I don't know exactly what that would look like, but I do appreciate that because it does make me say, okay, I see where there is value in a position like that. So I have a better understanding of like what the concept is. Maybe I was too wrapped around the axle on ombudsmans, and maybe I did too much research on them and got a little bit too far into the weeds. But I do appreciate that because that helps me get a little bit better idea of what the expectation of that role would be. So anyway.
Thank you, Commander. And Justin, please.
Thank you. And thank you, Commander and Liz, for being able to articulate what this position could look like, fine-tuned into something like a community navigator and outreach position that I think encaptures the spirit of what some of us are getting at, and also what Kim kind of surmised for all of us and identified as the gap that we have all realized here. I wanted to share out one of the things that stood out to me most from our last meeting when we were in breakout rooms, and it was the concept of the community wanting to find a way to connect with entities of power when there is a power dynamic. You know, Danny shared a really powerful story about how his work at the parish can sometimes be difficult because people still feel uncomfortable reaching out to him because he holds such a high community like leadership position within his religious community. And I likened that to what this position could bridge the gap in between the community and the city of Tigard, in terms of being able to break through the fact that this doesn't need to be, you know, Commander McDonald, you used the term like, you do not want your line of questioning to be a form of resistance. I do not want the comments or advocacy for this position to be a form of defiance either against any of your departments, and not just the police department, but also any of the city departments. This is not an act of defiance against any folks who are leads and do such incredible work within their own positions within the city of Tigard. Rather, an advocacy for another position that could assist and help and build trust within the community, make them feel connected. Chair Stoldryer, you mentioned that you're talking to folks and community members and that this is not what they want and they're concerned about other things right now. You know, I am a young person of color and I talk to folks in my community and I know what they are most concerned about right now, especially when it comes to higher entities of power like local government and state government, is they want to feel safe, heard, and protected. And yes, that can come in the form of multiple things, whether it's public safety departments, community outreach, DEI experts, you name it. But it could also come in the form of an individual who has an understanding of the heartbeat of the community and is reflective of the community and also prioritizes their needs and can help them navigate that too. Because I've worked in state government. It is one heck of a ride to try to navigate that, whether it's unemployment benefits or renewing your driver's license during a pandemic, but even more so in something that folks don't necessarily do as much research into, such as municipal governments and local county governments. And so I think that there is a benefit that could be offered to the community. And I think there is a want and need for this position in the community.
Thank you very much, Justin, for your comment.
I'd like a chance just to respond real quick. I'm at a disadvantage. I'm in my 40s. I don't have access to young adults the way some people do. And that's okay. I represent the people that I know in the community, that work in the community, the parents, the best I can. And I absolutely welcome and 100% support anybody else on in this group that, you know, represents a different demographic or a different age group. You know, that's That's what being a community is all about. And I'm love hearing from Justin, and I love hearing from all of you guys, and we all have different lived experiences. And I think it's okay to share what we hear. So thank you.
Thank you, Sean. And Jimmy, please.
In response to the statement about the size of our municipality, our community versus that of others, it's an old adage. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. We are living in a community that is not going to shrink in its size. In fact, it's going to grow, and it's going to grow expansively. I just read some information about the growth of the Latino population in the state of Oregon. It has grown 3 times as much over the years. That says to me that our community is browning. It's not getting whiter, it's browning. And when I think in terms of advocacy, yes, I want a department where I feel like I could go and advocate on my behalf. But folks, we need to remember, I'm Jimmy Brown. I'm badass. I've been doing this stuff for 40 years. I know how to navigate. I know 20 years ago, when I was stopped by the Tigard police, there was nobody in the department, in the city, that I could go to speak about my concerns. But being the type of person that I am and the knowledge, skills, and experience that I had, I went to the police chief. I was able to talk to him personally, in person, face to face. But the 2 gentlemen that had been stopped by the same police officers doing nothing more than I was doing didn't have that capability. They went directly and lawyered up. And yes, lawyers make wonderful advocates for us, but not everybody realizes that they can go to an attorney to get redress without having to come out of their pocket. When I sit back and I listen to this discussion, and again, I respect all of you in here. And in fact, I have marveled at the fact that in the 27 meetings that we have had, we have never really been to the point and place that we are right now. We haven't. We have lightly touched on issues of race and equity, and we've touched on issues of houselessness. But I will tell you, as a person of color in this community, this position that we are talking about right now is the type of position that every person of color in this community needs. Now, if that makes you feel uncomfortable, I apologize for that. But this is an important piece of where we are as an organization right here and right now. I applaud the city in its efforts for what it is trying to do across the spectrum as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And in my mind, I say, great, you should be doing that. You should be doing that without any of us, any board that the city has right now, pushing the city to do that. They should be doing that as a matter of course. That's nothing special. This is something special. This is the city saying, you know what, in addition to all those wonderful videos that we produce and all of the wonderful ways in which we've been able to connect with the community through Zoom and through flyers and all of those mechanisms that we've had to deal with over the last 2 years, this is one that we want to do for the community. Not necessarily for the city, because the city should be doing this. This is something that we can give to the community. And it's going to be something that's going to deal with an elder white person as much as it's going to deal with a 16-year-old who rides down the street on his or her skateboard. It's going to do something for people who are houseless. who have no connection to the power base inside of the city. But by having a position like this, that person could in fact come to and say, I don't have an address, I don't have a house, but I have some issues because I feel like I'm getting harassed by public works people, police folks, parks people, general community. And so I would ask myself, and I would ask all of you, why wouldn't we want to have that? Don't throw the red, don't throw the red herring out about in terms of cost. Because if this is important, as much as the police professional standards position is important, this is just as important. This is a position that is worthy of putting the resources behind to ensure that our community members have a voice that they can go to. Okay, enough of my rant. I apologize if I went too deep. And again, I'm sorry. I am not trying to be disrespectful to any of you. I care about you. I've been appreciative of the work that all of you did. And yes, I understand that we have different opinions, different lived experiences. And it's because of that I say this. So thank you.
Jimmy, please don't feel like you need to apologize for bringing us to a place where we should be. This is a place to have uncomfortable conversations. I'm grateful for everybody in this room opening up, being vulnerable, and having those tonight. And Valerie, please.
So I did want to respond to Sean's comment because, I am also a professional in my 40s and have lived in Tigard for the last 20 years. And, one of the things that I think that we may be losing sight of is the fact that the city council has charged us with the mission of looking at ways in which this organization, the city generally, and the police department more specifically, can improve its outreach to communities of color. And so I think, the concept of this is not consistent with my lived experience, coming from someone who has not experienced the things that people of color have experienced, I think that has value, but I don't think that value outweighs the needs of the communities of color or the needs of our diverse citizenry in the city of Tigard. So, respectfully, I support the creation of this position because, I'm a professional in my 40s, with a tremendous amount of privilege. I don't have a lot of difficulty navigating administrative systems. There are a lot of people in our community that do, who wouldn't feel comfortable calling Commander McDonald or the chief, if they were to have an experience such as Jimmy had described. And so really what we're looking at here is a way to create, and as the statement said, to meet the citizens of Tigard where they are, which at its core is the fundamental responsibility when we look at what diversity is. Diversity and efforts for inclusion and diversity are really aimed at meeting people where they are. And so that's really all that we're asking the city council to consider here. So I just felt I had, as an older person of color, had to weigh in against that.
Thank you, Valerie. And something I realized that I didn't do is explain actually how the mechanics of going to a vote are. So when there's a couple more comments, but when this conversation winds down, a board member, a voting board member, will make a motion to vote and then say which of the two recommendations you're making the motion on. Someone will second, and then we'll call for other additional comments and go to the vote. So that's how that mechanic will work. Apologize for not making that clear at the beginning. And Sean, please.
Let's see. So if the position sounds like an ombudsman, and it's my understanding only the city of Portland has that position, and it's actually a department, and it's a department that's been in the news considerably, that's still not, and this is hard because these are tough conversations. I really respect some of the people here that have brought this idea forward, and this is difficult. If it looks like the ombudsman position, I still, from who I've spoken with and represent, I still don't think it's something I can support tonight. If, getting back to Kim's question, what is something we could agree on that might be helpful? I would probably propose something different. It has occurred to me that for a while, when you walk into the city of Tigard, when you walk into the city of Tigard building, there's a lot of glass windows. It's a little bit confusing. It's if you're not, as some of you guys said, really good at navigating the system, it is a lot. It is a lot. If you go to a university and you go to the administration building, you're probably going to see a welcome desk with a couple people working there, and somebody's probably going to be bilingual. Something like that. Cities used to have this years and years ago, and budget cuts and safety issues came up, and you started seeing those positions disappear. So if that's what we're talking about, is getting, a welcome desk with the staff by a couple of people that are trained in how all the city departments work and who's who and who can help with what and who's bilingual and who's not, I think that's a great idea. But that's not what I've read in the proposal, and that's not what I heard as a request. Anyways, thank you.
There are so many hands. Patty, please.
I have to say that when this first came up, I, as a person who's lived here for 30 years and have felt the changes that have happened in the last 5 years, the establishment of this committee, the amazing openness of the Tigard Police Department, et cetera, I was thinking, we were there. Why do we need this position? What is it going to change? And as we've continued to have this conversation, and I actually I was in a Zoom meeting with students in Washington State on equity, diversity, and inclusion last week, and it just transformed my opinion, because they were saying the same thing. Who do we go to? Who do we talk to? Where is our voice? And listening tonight to Liz and Jimmy and Justin, I have done a full 180. Since our last meeting. And I think there is a very important place for this position in this community. I think Tigard has done a wonderful job. They've established this committee. They've done so much to make this a welcoming community. But I still think there needs to be a place for those people to go who are saying, who do I go? Where do I go? Who do I talk to? How do I become welcomed? Okay, I'm done.
Thank you, Patty. John, please.
Yes, I just want to comment in terms of, I appreciate in terms of Liz, your comment earlier regarding in terms of the focus of DEI within the city. I think that's important. I think having that dedication is important for the staff to have more education and more knowledge around it. This is pretty much the same thing in terms of the dedication, in terms of how do we connect our community, especially a community of color, to the city, to law enforcement. And so I really appreciate in terms of what Jimmy had to say earlier, and he said it so well. So I think in terms of, if we're gonna commit to something, I think this is an area that we really need to really commit to, especially if we want to commit to connecting our community of color, especially as the population is growing in that area.
Thank you, John. And Jimmy, please.
Okay, let me unmute myself. Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are.
Okay, good. Because I was going to say something really crazy, but I'm not now. So, I think we are at the precipice of looking at a community that was and moving toward a community that is going to be. And when we do that, there's a lot of feelings that come up from that. The feelings of, this is a small community. This is a community that doesn't necessarily need this kind of thing. We don't necessarily have the issues that the bigger cities around us have. And that, to me, speaks of privilege. Something that we've talked about early on in the formation of our group, the concept of privilege. Privilege says, I want to remain in a place that makes me and mine feel comfortable. Pushing against privilege says, I want to be in a place where I can feel comfortable and share in the benefits that you who have privilege have. So when I look at an organization like our municipality, I say, do you want to open yourself to that place where everyone, and I mean everyone, feels as though they have a right to be there and they have support in being there, and if they have issues that are concerning to them, that there is someone here who can walk with you through that system. I know that, you know, we live in a time where, you know, the slightest bit of something that appears new is enough to cause people's heads to blow up. Whether or not Portland is the only city in the state of Oregon that has an ombudsman's position, you know, I haven't researched that. I know certainly in state government, they have such positions, whatnot. It doesn't matter if nobody in the state of Oregon has such a position. What matters is the discussion that such a position is warranted in order to make the populace feel as though they have an additional inroad into the structure. Because then it does become an issue of power and power dynamics. And I see no reason not to give a bit of that power dynamic to someone who feels like they don't have it by virtue either of economics, gender, age, or race and ethnicity. So share that. Share it openly. Share it honestly. Don't be afraid of it. I don't think it's our responsibility as PSAB to really get into the scope and the dynamic and the structure of the position. I think what we are saying to City Council is we believe that a position of such type is of value to the structure of the city. How it's going to look, we can leave that to City Council and its HR people and its budget analysts and whatnot. And maybe some connections with outside community members to help frame and shape that. But I'm not looking necessarily to say, we're going to tie this thing up in a nice little box and put a bow on it, and then there it is. I don't think that's our role. But it is our role to talk about why such a position is necessary overall in the structure of the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy. I don't see any other hands for comment. So if anyone would like to make a motion to vote. Justin, please.
I would actually like to move that, should we hold a vote that we combine the two proposals and hold a joint vote on both proposals.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
Is there any comments on holding these as a joint vote? Understanding that they are set. Yes, Sean.
I would like to stay with the plan of holding a separate vote.
Okay. John?
I agree with Sean. I think it's important to, because there's been a lot of discussion on one of the recommendations, so it'd be probably a good idea to keep it separate.
Okay, so we will take a vote on whether or not to separate or to do them together. So Commander McDonald? You're muted, Commander.
So we're voting to keep them together or separate?
Yes, so a yes vote is to keep vote on the two recommendations together, and no vote is to vote on them separately.
I vote no to vote separately on them.
Thank you. Officer Nunn?
I think I have to vote no, but this might be for Shelby to decide. I don't know if I should be able to vote on the professional standards, seeing as that's my direct supervisor.
So as long as you don't have a direct financial interest in it, state ethics law says that you can vote on it.
Okay, I'm still a no, separate.
And Shelby Rahalla?
No.
Michael O'Brien?
No.
Emilio Calderon?
No means separate, right?
Yes.
Then yeah, I'll vote no.
Way to make that one confusing. Liz Newton?
No.
No. John Trin?
No.
Jimmy Brown?
The yes is to keep them together.
Yes.
Yes.
Patty Lofgren?
Yes.
Justin Lowe?
Yes.
Valerie Sasaki?
Yes, I'm going to vote for it.
And Sean Stoldreyer?
No.
No, okay. I wasn't sure if we would need a 75%. I think this might have been a 50-50 because it's more a rules conversation, but it fails. So we will be voting on them separately. Now we like to entertain a motion for one or either. And John Trin?
I move to accept the proposal on the second recommendation, which is the community navigation. Is that
Yes.
I will second that.
Okay. Any further comments? Okay, so we'll go to vote. Sorry, 1 second. And Commander McDonald?
Yes.
Officer Nunn?
No.
Shelby Rahalla?
No, and I think there's been a lot of focus in the discussion on changing the culture of Tigard, and I fully support that. I think it's very symbolic that this one person would change the entire culture of the city. I think that that's something that all of us at the city have to do. And I recognize the passion behind this proposal, and I think I don't disagree with anything that's been said in terms of the objectives. I'm not afraid of change that's been referenced. I'm not afraid of the unknown. I think that absolutely we need to get there. But I think one person with an expectation that that will change the entire city culture, I fear it's symbolic and takes away from the harder work that everybody at the city has to do.
Thank you, Shelby. Michael O'Brien? Oh, you're muted. Oh, you're still muted. Thumbs up for yes, thumbs down for no. Thank you. Emilio Calderon?
Yes.
Liz Newton?
Yes.
John Trin?
yes.
Jimmy Brown?
Yes.
Patty Lofgren?
Yes.
Justin Lowe?
Yes.
Valerie Sasaki?
Yes, and I just wanted to respond to City Attorney Rahalla's point, because I think this is one of those situations where, you know, and I think Dr. King mentioned this too, is that, you know, there is the pace of progress moves forward, right? And so what we're talking about here is an incremental step forward. And so I think if we're going to vote against this, I think it creates a world where we've allowed the perfect to be the enemy of the good. And so for that reason, I am going to vote in favor of this recommendation.
Thank you, Valerie. And Sean Stoldreyer?
No.
With a vote of 9 yeses to 3 nos, that is 75%. So the vote passes. Would anyone like to make a motion to vote on the professional standards sergeant?
I would.
Is there?
Sorry. I'd
Oh,
like
is
to
there-
recommend adoption of.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Yes, I second.
Any further comments? Okay, we'll go to the vote. And Commander McDonald,
Yes.
Officer Nunn,
Yes.
Shelby Rahala,
Yes, with the clarification that this is the fiscal year 2022-23 budget, not 21-22.
yeah, good clarification. Thank you. Michael O'Brien,
Yes.
Emilio Calderon,
Yes.
Liz Newton.
Yes, sorry, I couldn't find the unmute.
Oh, you're fine. John Trin,
Yes.
Jimmy Brown.
Yes.
Sorry, what was that?
Yes.
Patty Lofgren,
Yes.
Justin Lowe,
Yes.
Valerie Sasaki,
Yes.
and Sean Stoldryer.
Yes.
The vote of 12 yeses to 0 no's, the professional standards sergeant recommendation passes. It was a lot of work to get there, but that was a very powerful and great conversation, I think. So I just want to applaud everybody for having that and being willing to do it on YouTube. And Sean, I think we can move into our next order of business. Oh, you're muted, Sean.
Yes, thank you. Okay, the time is 6:20. We're a little bit behind schedule. However, Commander McDonald and Officer Nunn, are you ready to begin your presentation of the school resource officers?
Yep, we can do it. And we'll get it done in record time.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And we can always reserve time in the next meeting for more questions and discussion.
Yeah, we've set aside 50 minutes at the end to bring up current events and how they affect us. So we may have to just push that to the next meeting.
Yes, we will need to still reserve time at the end of the meeting, though, to vote on a new chair and vice chair, because this wraps up our current topic now that we've voted on those recommendations. So we'll just make sure we have an extra 10 minutes at the end. But
Okay.
Commander,
Thank
please.
you, Kim.
Thank you, Sean.
Okay, I'm going to try and share my screen here. Hold on. Got to find the right thing to share. Just a second. Bear with me. There's what I want. Y'all see that?
No, we can't see that.
Oh, boy.
I think Tammy has the presentation. She
Yeah,
can-
Tammy, hook me up, will you?
I sure will. Here you go.
I was seeing all of it on here, but apparently
Everybody see the screen?
Yes.
yeah, I've got it. Thanks, Tammy.
Oh, no problem.
I told Tammy that if I couldn't figure it out, I was going to do stand-up comedy, which would be punishment for all of us. So we got this going. Go ahead and move forward to the next screen. We're going to talk about school resource officers and the role that our officers play. Yes, that is a picture of me many, many years ago. I was a school resource officer for 3.5 years before I was promoted to sergeant. And I will tell you this, being a school resource officer was the most rewarding time as a police officer that I had. Working in the schools, working with students and educators is inherently a positive environment, right? And that's the whole idea of having SROs in the schools, is to help create that positive environment, to help be a resource for staff, for students, for families, for community members to be able to come in and help to, understand maybe the criminal justice system, understand law enforcement in general, but then also just to be there as an extra adult with a different perspective in the school environment. So a little bit about SROs. They're all police officers, at least here in Tigard, and the minimum requirement is to have 3 years of experience as a police officer. Generally speaking, we see officers that have much greater tenure than that. They need to be self-motivated because they're going to spend a lot of time working independently, more so than our officers that are just our patrol officers. Like Nick alluded to, his supervisor by design is who serves as the professional standards sergeant. These officers don't need a whole lot of supervision. That's our expectation of them, is that they're able to go out and handle most of that stuff that they're going to come across on their own without the assistance of a supervisor. Unlike some of our newer officers that might be working on the street, they might need a little bit more guidance from a sergeant or a lieutenant on a more regular basis. Our SROs don't do that. They need to have that desire to work with staff, students, parents, to be that resource, to be the person that they can go to ask all types of questions. I've had tons of different questions as an SRO in my time when I was there, and I know that still happens for our officers today. And then currently we do it as a 4-year rotational assignment. So you put in, it's a specialty assignment, you have to apply for it, and it's competitive. We generally have multiple officers that are putting in for it, sometimes as many as 5 or 6 for one position. And they serve 4 years in the schools doing this work. And I always joked that I didn't get to graduate with my class because I got promoted in January, and you build a relationship. I spent a lot of my time at the high school, so I got to know a lot of those kids from freshman year all the way through senior year. And so I graduated early, is how the kids put it. I told them I flunked out, but the kids told me I graduated early, and when I left in January to become to get promoted out of SROs to sergeant. Next slide, Tammy. So this is how we do. Oh, go ahead. There we go. This is how we do our selection process. We want to make sure that we include people from the school. We've included students. We've included teachers, or most specifically, we include a school administrator, probably the school administrator that SRO would be working with most directly. And it's different at each school how that's designed. But we do an internal job posting, and then the officers will put in a letter of interest and probably a resume as well. They do an interview panel, and they go through a battery of questions about why are they the best to be an SRO. And then it goes, the recommendation then would come in the way it's set up currently, would come to me. The SROs are in my span of supervision, so it would come to me, and then ultimately the chief is the one that gives the ultimate approval. But I've never seen actually in any of our processes the chief go against what the selection of the process itself was. The chief could reserve that right. However, it's never happened, at least in any of my time in the last 11 years that I've been in supervision. That picture there on the left-hand side is a picture of at the time that it was taken, current and former school resource officers that worked in the department. So as you can tell, there's quite a few of us. And the interesting thing to note is that a lot of us get promoted and move through the ranks in the department. And it's a testament to the program and the quality of people that are in there. There's a few retirees, actually 4 or 5 retirees in that photo right now, and then a couple that have been detectives and then promoted and things like that. Next slide, please. So one of the important things about SROs is they don't just get selected and then we throw them off into the schools. They have to attend specialized training. So they go through the NASRO, the National Association of School Resource Officers, basic course. We also try to send them through the advanced course if it's available at the time. It isn't as available. And then we do all kinds of training with the schools. So about a year and a half ago or so, we started a full review of the SRO program with Tigard-Tualatin School District. It was led by the district. They engaged many different community partners, families from the district, students were heavily involved in the assessment of the SRO program and then what it would look like moving forward. So one of the things that we got out of that process, well, a couple of things. One was that the community is very supportive of the SRO program and wanted SROs in the schools in both Tigard and Tualatin. So it was district-wide, so not just the city of Tigard, it included the Tualatin Police Department as well. So we learned that. But what we also learned is that there needed to be better integration with the SROs and the school staff. And what that has resulted in, and I'll ask Nick to pop in here, and talk a little bit about some of the trainings, the different types of trainings that the SROs now participate in with school administrators, with other school staff, teachers, and other support staff in the schools. But that's one of the things that we do more of. The SROs are involved more in those types of trainings. Nick, do you want to jump in and talk about one of those if you have a second? I know you're doing double duty, so if you can't, then that's okay.
No, I'm sitting outside right now. So
okay.
I'm working the school board meeting tonight too. So all the waving is people going to the school board meeting. So as the commander said, part of the revised SRO, how that looks, we are being more involved with the professional training of when the teachers go through some of their professional trainings. They had a professional training day where they had speakers come in, and so we participated in those with our individual schools. I am a member, or I participate in the equity team at Tigard High School, so I attend meetings every other Thursday with the equity team. And so these are all things. This is my second stint as an SRO, so I've already served 4 years. I rotated out for a little bit and then I came back in. And so this is I guess would be my second year, although first year was COVID. So this is my first full year at Tigard High School. And those type of trainings were all something we never did my first go around. You worked in the schools, if they had a question, they would ask you. But actually being invited to and going to trainings with the teachers and staff is all something that's been new this year. That's not something we've done in the past. So that's just an example of some of the stuff we do that is new.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, and I will say this, that combined training that we're doing with the staff was incredibly welcomed by us. I know that, when in my time, and granted, it's been a number of years since I was an SRO, we didn't get as much of that face-to-face time with all of the staff and being as integrated as what we're doing now. And I really feel like it's going to make a big difference in terms of really making the SRO be a part of that team of adults at the school that are helping our kids to navigate growing up, especially at the high school. The high school is a really critical time in our youth's lives, and kids need all that adult support that they can get. Another thing in there, that fourth bullet point on the annual Oregon School Resource Officer Association training conference, The SROs go to that with a handful of the school administrators that they work with during the year. So they get an opportunity to collaborate. They learn about current best practice. They learn about different cases of incidents that may have occurred, but more importantly, they get an opportunity to kind of get to know each other outside of that school environment. And sometimes those relationships, you learn a little bit more about each other in that environment. It makes for a better collaboration when they are back in the schools during the school year. And then that last one there on the bottom, it's called I Love You Guys, the standard response protocol. This has to do with, and Nick, I might ask you to jump in because I know you were a part of this when we really got this going. This has to do with response if you have a crisis at the school, some sort of major event, and effectively how we're going to reunify families with the kids and be able to handle one of those really watershed events. Do you want to talk at all about that, Nick, about some of the training that we've done with the district on that?
Sure. This came about, this is, last I knew, the entire state of Oregon was looking at going to this specific protocol and how we are going to respond in case of a major incident at a school. All of Washington County currently uses this, and they were talking about going statewide. It has specific verbiage on what words we use, the procedures and all of that. My first stint as an SRO, this is when this really started taking shape, and they sent several of us to the training, and we were train the trainer, so we could train our school staff on how to do this. This is actually really good training. The guy that developed this, his daughter was actually, unfortunately, he lost his daughter in a school shooting. And after that, he actually developed this program on how police and the school should respond in a major incident. So it's really good training. It's very relevant, very thoughtful, and most of the state is now going to this training or going to it.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. And it is. It's. I've been through his presentation, and it's remarkable. So it's excellent because it's getting school officials and police on the same page on how we respond to a critical incident at a school. Next slide, Tammy. So what do SROs do? I'm not gonna bore you with reading all these, but some of the most critical things that they do are in the middle there: role models and mentors, being there for the kids. I'm going to tell a personal story. I had a student when I was at the high school who will remain unnamed, but this student was one of the biggest problems that I dealt with in my time at the high school. About 5 or 6 years ago, I was working in the evening time, and I got called by our record staff to come up to the front desk. And so I went up there, and at the front lobby was this student with his wife and his 2 little girls. And he came in, he said, "Hey, I just wanted to say thank you for all the time you spent with me, and I wanted you to meet my family." And that right there gave me more payback from my time as an SRO than I could have ever hoped to get out of anything else. It was great to see him. I've communicated with him a few times since then. It was great to get to meet his 2 little girls. They were just fantastic, cutest little things you could imagine. But those are some examples of the types of things we don't really know what we're doing when we're working with these students, the impact that we can make on them. So hearing him say thank you is pretty cool. Down there where it says investigate incidents, as well as work with DHS. So that's Department of Human Services. So our SROs do basically all of the child abuse cases that come in that are with school-age children. So anything from kindergarten through age 18, our SROs are going to do those investigations that come in through child services. So any type of child abuse that would come through, they're going to work on those, and they may work on them in conjunction with a detective, depending on the severity of the case. And then I'll just note, I guess, attending school events. Nick's attending a school event tonight. He's going to the school board meeting to be there at their request, to be there to oversee the school board meeting. So we do types of things like that as well. Next slide. So one of the other things that they do, Nick is one of them, is to be a cadet advisor. So we have a cadet program here that includes youths from age 16 to 20. Most of the time they are, well, often they're Tigard High students, but sometimes, I mean, they could go to other high schools. We have had kids from other surrounding high schools, but I love that picture there where we have three of our cadets with SROs. That was when we had a program of 4 SROs. They were, and those were some of our cadets as they were graduating from high school. Obviously pre-COVID, 2017, as you can see on the stole of one of the students there. But it's an excellent program. We've actually hired a few officers now out of our cadet program. They were cadets, and then as they got old enough to become officers, you have to be 21 years old in Oregon to be a police officer. We have a few that have become police officers, but the great part about it is there's no expectation that they move on to a career in law enforcement, but it gives them an opportunity to be a part of the police department, see how things work. Many of them use it as a great opportunity to build a resume or to help them with college applications, things like that. And we've had a lot of students go on and have some very successful other careers as well. Our program's pretty mature and been around for quite some time. So you can tell by the smile on the 4 police officers' faces there that this is probably the most fun thing that they do, is working with our cadets and getting to, yeah, Nick's nodding his head because he's chomping at the bit right now to get back at it, because our cadet program has kind of been on hold because of COVID. And we were talking about it a couple of weeks ago, and we think we're going to get the green light to be able to do cadet stuff again here in the relatively near future. And I know that all those kids that are still involved are going to be excited about that. So let's go. Oh, go ahead, Nick.
It's a good program. Not just we enjoy it, but the youth enjoy it. I can tell you currently, it's been going on for 3 weeks now. We have all the cadets get to go to an academy, kind of like a police academy. And so we have 3 new cadets. 2 of them go to Tigard High. 1 goes to Tualatin High School, and they've all just started. Today being Monday, the 2 that go to Tigard High School came up to me all excited today to tell me everything that they did on Saturday and what they got to do and what they're going to do next Saturday. And so they get really enthused about it.
Yeah, great stuff. Excellent stuff. So it's great to see the kids come in and be all excited and nervous too. That's kind of fun too, to see how excited they are and nervous they are because they want to do well, right? It's important to them. So next slide. And this one is really a very ancillary responsibility, but it's something that we work on with OLCC. Years ago, Tigard had a pretty significant issue with compliance with businesses selling alcohol to minors. And so it was actually brought to OLCC, and OLCC came to us to partner in trying to do what are called compliance checks, which is where we actually take a youth that is under the age of 21 with their own ID. They go into an establishment and attempt to purchase alcohol. And that's effectively, it's a compliance check is what it is. And I'm happy to report that the last time we did it, I think we had like 97% compliance, which is pretty darn good. It's one of the highest rates in the state now. I'm embarrassed to say that 15 years ago, it was probably almost opposite of that, we had a huge issue with businesses that would just straight up not even check the ID of people that were purchasing alcohol. So excellent education has occurred over the years, and businesses have really come in line with following the established rules. And we now have an incredibly high compliance rate in the city of Tigard. And those haven't really been happening during COVID because of the COVID protocols. I think we were able to do one last summer. No, we haven't done any. I know we had talked about doing them, but anyway, it's something that is not something that happens all that often. A couple of times a year, maybe. And especially now, Tigard isn't really a hotspot for OLCC anymore because the compliance rate has gone up so high, which is good. That's excellent to hear. So that about does it as a quick run through. I tried to stay close to time, Sean, for us on this. Are there any questions that anybody has about the SRO program we might be able to plow through real quick? Otherwise, maybe write them down and send them our way. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Thanks. First off, I know you all went through a giant amount of work with the school district, and the community, starting in the fall of 2020. Nick, you referenced the new contract that was signed, spring of 21. And so just I wanted to applaud all that work that you've all done together. One of I read a Tigard Life article around, kind of why this work started. It basically describes how the views or experiences of the white communities in these schools was vastly different than the views and experiences of the people of color in the schools. So is there, all the things that you've outlined here should definitely improve that situation and keep things going. Is there any interaction tracking that's being done that's similar to what is done on the streets? So you have some data points that can, show or keep you on track to continue to improve the experience of everyone.
Yeah, and if Nick wants to jump in when I'm done, I'll let him. But one of the things, Jeff, that we've done, and this was by design as a part of the program, and this is something the SROs keep track of. So what we determined and we figured out is we're really good at keeping track of statistics in the police department, right? So we keep track of reports that we write, arrests that we make, things like that. But one thing that we weren't great at was keeping track of all of those other interactions that we had. So one of the things that we designed is we have a better tracking system for that. So we keep track of all of those types of other contacts that we have, I guess is probably that's a clinical, more of a clinical term. But so a lot of the student affinity groups have come to us, that was kind of the idea, was come to us to ask, hey, can you come and speak to our group? Nick's a part of the equity team at the high school. That's by design, is to be involved, not to mention the fact he actually wanted to do it and actually enjoys doing it. So these are some of the types of things that we weren't necessarily being involved in before, but sorry. I was like, where'd Jeff go? I'm looking at you. I mean, trying to make eye contact through the computer. But those were things that we weren't necessarily included in before, and now we are. And it's really critical to be involved in those building those relationships before you have to come in front of a police officer, right? We want to be creating those. We want to be creating those environments where we are building those relationships when we can, right? Not when we have to. And that's where we've, I think, really made some inroads. And it's something that I always tried to do, is to get involved with those groups. Now we just have a formalized process where the schools are now really aware of, hey, we actually need to include the SRO when we can in certain different things. So we've got some benchmarks that we now can strive to hit, which we didn't before. And you're right, it was a lot of work. We put a lot of effort into that. The term watching sausage get made is what that was. We made sausage for a year, and it was actually a really good experience. I've made a couple of friends out of the process with the district that I didn't have before. So that's kind of cool. Sean.
Commander, just in the interest of time, first, I want to thank you and Officer Nunn for the presentation.
Yeah.
I don't know if Kim plans to continue this discussion and questions next meeting or not, but
how about this, Sean, real quick? If people have questions, if you're writing them down, if you want to send those through to Kim, I can be prepared to respond to those next time. And like maybe if there's questions, we can throw those in during the chief's update or something. I don't want to steal the agenda, but we could, if there's a bunch of questions, then we can maybe set aside some different time. But if people have other questions, maybe we can just do it that way.
Okay. I defer to Kim, but that sounds good to me.
That was exactly what I was going to suggest. So you guys are doing my job. It's great. So yes, if you have any questions, feel free to send them my way, and we'll compile them and we'll reserve some space in the agenda for next meeting. So I'm gonna do things a little out of order. I'm gonna share where we're going first before we talk about the new chair, vice chair. So this wrapped up our complaints and discipline, and then we'll do some more SRO, but we also have our friends from MHRT, the mental health response team, who are gonna come talk to us next week. And then we're moving pretty quickly, I think, more than we thought we would. So we do have a couple of free meetings still in May that we don't have topics. So I'm going to encourage everybody, and I'll send it out again, the list of topics that we originally brainstormed at the beginning. Folks want to take a look at it, think of anything that we haven't touched on, that you still have questions about, that you would like this group to kind of get into with the department before we wrap up at the end of June. So given that we kind of have this mishmash for the last 8 meetings of this group, we're going to elect, I think that's going to be our last chair and vice chair. So if you have been wanting to be a chair, vice chair, and have been waiting for your opportunity, this is it. So we will, if you would like to nominate yourself or someone else for chair, we'll do that first. Please go ahead. Sean.
I would like to nominate Patty.
Patty, do you accept that nomination?
Oh, okay.
Thank you. And Jimmy, please.
Excellent choice. And I think in keeping with our connection to the community at large, I would like to nominate Emilio Calderon for our vice president position. Or vice chair position, excuse me.
Vice chair. And Emilio, would you like to accept that nomination?
I am very sorry to inform, but I don't think I will have the time for that since I have my IB testing, which is just similar to AP, coming up in May. And I don't think it would be fair to you guys or the community if I have to either miss those meetings or I'm busy studying for that. So as much as I would love to, I will have to decline. And I'm really honored, Jimmy. Thank you so much.
Good luck on your exams.
Yeah, good luck.
You all need them.
Jimmy, is there anyone else who would like to nominate?
Excuse me. Am I? Oh, I am verbal. Yes. Yes, I would like to nominate Judge Michael O'Brien as vice chair.
Well, thank you, Jimmy. I'm flattered by the nomination. I think it would make sense to have somebody from the community serve in that capacity. And I would respectfully defer to such a person if anybody volunteers. If nobody wants to do it, I certainly will be honored to do it.
John's hand just popped up. So John.
I'd like to nominate Justin.
For chair or for vice chair?
Vice chair.
Vice chair. Okay. Any other nominations for either chair or vice chair? Jimmy, your hand is still up, and I don't know if that's leftover or not.
I think it's leftover.
But Justin has something to say.
Justin, yes.
I actually wanted to politely decline, even though I am incredibly grateful and honored for the nomination, John. Actually, better time than never to let folks know. 2 weeks from now will actually be my last meeting with the PSAB. I am actually moving from Tigard, unfortunately, and will be in the Aloha Beaverton area by the end of March. And so I'll still be here through the third week of March, but after that, I will no longer be here. And so I will have to kindly resign my position as a community member from this board, but have enjoyed my time here. And again, really appreciate the nomination.
Thank you, Justin, for your time, and your contributions will certainly be missed. Valerie?
So I'd like to nominate Jeff as vice chair.
And Jeff, do you accept that nomination?
Sure, thank you.
All right, so we have, oh, I'm losing track. Okay, Jeff now is vice chair and Patty as chair. Are there any other recommendations or not nominations? Okay, so Patty first. Does someone second her nomination?
A second.
Second.
Right. Any further comments? Any objection? Patty, congratulations. You are our likely last chair of the PSAB.
Thank you very much. It's an honor.
And would someone like to second Jeff's nomination?
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Second.
And any comments? Any objections? Seeing none, congratulations, Jeff. So I have wrapped up next steps. We still have a few more minutes left in the meeting. So if anyone would like to share what else is going on in Tigard right now, please.
Just a comment. So our mask mandates end shortly. Will that place us in a face-to-face environment, or are we maintaining our Zoom environment?
I will defer to anyone with the city, but we may need to get back to you on that as things evolve.
That's a good question, Jimmy. We can have this team check, but I think council's going to in-person meetings in April. So I am, as a big community advocate, I'm advocating for this group and the Youth Advisory Council and all the groups that I'm involved with to be able to go in person. I think, and I see it might be Assistant City Manager Nyland's hand is up, but yeah, that's my understanding. We're going in April.
Okay.
So just to provide a little more context, so we're having conversations about what that looks like if the mask mandate is lifted internally. What other protocols are still in place? Because if it's maintaining social distancing, then we will be faced with some space challenges and whatnot. So we will learn more. And based on the conversation that we have at leadership tomorrow, as well as next week, I can follow up with this group to let you know where we stand. But we're still approaching this with caution and trying to provide the safest environment as possible. So we don't think everything is going to be eased, but definitely the masks are up for conversation, and then the space distancing and all that will be also continued. So I will follow up and let you know.
Thank you, Kathy.
I would like to share, I'm interested also in in-person meetings if the city is okay with it and if we would not have to wear masks.
Thank you, Sean. And Shelby.
Yeah, as Kathy said, there's still a lot to evaluate. One thing that we do know is that state law requires all meetings be held hybrid. And so even if we do go back to meeting in person, this group will have to have a hybrid component and allow for remote video participation still. So that part wouldn't change.
Thank you, Shelby. Any last comments? Justin, please.
I wanted to say for folks who might identify as a Ukrainian or a part of the Ukrainian community here in Tigard, to wish them strength and resilience in the ongoing invasion and war that is happening in their home country. and for folks who are in the community that have family members, that our thoughts and prayers are with them. And I hope that they're able to find the support and community that they do need within the city of Tigard.
Thank you for that, Justin. And with that, Sean, I think you can call for the conclusion of the meeting.
All right, thank you, everyone. I'd like to call for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Seconded.
Okay, any further discussion or opposition? Okay, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Everybody.
Everybody.